The point of our show is to demonstrate that just about anybody, you can do this. While I was shining up the headlamp surround bezels, it occurred to me I really need to know the correct way to do the polishing of the Brightwork. I did get with a local shop, Pardini Dan's Auto Body, who sadly has moved away. He's moved north to Eureka, California. He did my lower sill moldings, and they came out beautiful. He pretty much showed me how to do some of the polishing of the Brightwork. So it turns out we need specific buffing wheels and specific compounds for polishing the Brightwork and some of the plastic that I'm going to be reusing, like some of the lenses that I'm restoring on my marker lamps. So let's go over what we need to polish the Brightwork. So there's different buffs to use, the wheel. There's tightly sewn ones, there's no sewing, and here's another one that's sewn, but it's like an inch or 3/4 of an inch apart. So these are going to correspond with whatever compound you're using and whatever kind of cutting you're trying to do. Now the gray compound is going to be for cutting through some of the thicker stuff, and I want to use that with a buffing wheel that has like 1/8 or 1/4 or 3/8 inch stitching. And that's going to make it so that I can press harder onto the buff, and it's going to create some heat, and that's okay because that's going to be our friend while we cut through some of the abrasiveness that will help cut through the the dullness. As we get down to a brown compound, that could go with a coarse stitch like this guy here. This wheel here is a 6-inch 40-ply wheel that has 3/4 inch stitching. Something like that could work there, or you could work a brown compound with just a loose buff. This one here is a 6-inch 40-ply buff. Once we get to the white compound, that's a chrome compound, and that's going to help bring a mirror finish to my Brightwork. When I'm doing things like sill moldings and window sills, I want that stuff to be shiny, looking like new. The other thing I have here is a green compound. A green compound is going to be good for the polishing of plastic lenses, like maybe a headlamp lens. If it's a newer car, all the headlamp lenses are plastic. In my case, a Mazda RX3 has tail lamp lenses and marker lamp lenses that are plastic, and that's where that's going to come in for me because I'm restoring my marker lamps. And something like that I'm going to use on a loose leaf. So the finer the compound, the looser leaf you want. This one here is a 6-inch 20-ply wheel. I got a 6-inch 40-ply wheel. I bought a 6-inch 3/8 stitch 40-ply wheel, and I've also got the one over here I showed you. So the first thing I'm going to do is put the tightly stitched buff on, and we're going to use the gray compound to work out the rough stuff on our Brightwork. I'm then going to take it to the brown compound, where I'm going to use it on this wheel here with the 3/4 inch stitching. And then after that, I will take one of the buffs off, probably the 3/8 inch stitch one. I'll take that off and replace it with the 6-inch 40-ply no stitch that I'll use the chrome compound for. And that should get me some pretty good looking Brightwork. One thing I didn't mention over here, I do have like a rake. It's a buffing rake, and the rake is good to help evenly coat the buff with the compound. So I'm going to start with a 3/8 inch stitched buff in order to do the gray compound and do the primary cutting, and then I'm going to switch on over to the 3/4 inch stitched buff to do the secondary cutting with the brown tripling. So there's a starter application. I will be reapplying that every 20 to 30 seconds during the polishing of the Brightwork. So here's a typical piece. We're going to start with a little trim piece here. This goes on the rear quarter window. So there's some heavy stuff there. Things like the windscreen surround, Brightwork, a little heavier on the crap. So might be a little tougher to clean those, but we'll get it out. So I want to be careful not to create too much heat, because the resulting burn will be difficult to remove from my trim piece. I'm being very careful not to catch this edge on the buff, because then it will rip it clean out of my hands. That's how I almost lost a chunk out of my skull doing the headlamp surrounds. I kind of need my skull. I'm using it. So this piece appears to be fairly well done on the gray, you know, the heavy abrasive. It's ready to move on to Tripoli. Let's do one of these other pieces from the windshield surround that had a heavier deposit of corrosion and dirt. I'm going to say these are ready for Tripoli. So I'm going to wash them with Dawn detergent and hot water in order to get the excess compound off. So the excess compound easily came off with hot water and Dawn detergent. The next compound we're going to move on to is the Tripoli. I'm actually seeing, now that this windshield piece is clean, I should probably hit it some more with the gray. There's a scratch there. I can get that out. There's some heavy deposit here. Actually, this piece here might need some more gray too. Yeah, but it's nice once you get it cleaned up, you can see, is it really time to move on to the next buffing wheel? And in this case, no. There is a scratch here that's not really coming off with the buffing wheel. I'm hitting it with sandpaper. I'm kind of in the middle of that now. It is coming out with the sandpaper, so I wanted to catch that on film before I make it go bye-bye. And some of these on the ridge here that weren't really coming out, it's possible I may have burned it with the heat and the coarse grit compound. So I'm pulling that off with the sandpaper as well. I'm using 220. So that's where I'm at here on the windscreen surround strip. So as you can see, I've got so many different pieces to do. There's probably 30 to 40 different pieces here. I'm not going to film all that. I mean, that would make for a pretty boring video. But we'll do these first two pieces together here, and from there we'll show it all to you when we're done. Another washing, and they're looking a little better this time after the sandpaper and the extra pass through the gray compound. So now we're going to move on to the other buffing wheel, which has been preloaded with Tripoli, and we'll get that next layer of shine going on these pieces. Okay, I'm going to put on the 40 ply wheel now, and we're going to do the chrome layer. I'm saving my 20 ply buff for the plastic restoration because I don't want to build up any heat while I'm doing the plastic. That would be bad. So I'm thinking the 20 ply is better for cooling than the 40 ply. So let's put the 40 ply here and we'll get going. Or maybe I'll stick it over here. Loading up the new wheel with the chrome compound, the white. Once I see it spitting down there, I know I have enough.
So now notice that this wheel has no stitching in the wheel. I'm not generating a ton of heat. I'm able to actually hold it right by the wheel. You can't do that with a stitched buff because it just gets hot. Now this thing looks really, really good right now. When I went to the white buff, you know, the chrome polish, you know, notice this thing's got a bunch of gray on it. I don't think it should. So what's happening is when I get to the warm water wash with the detergent, I wasn't quite getting all of the previous compound off, and I just learned that when I was drying these two pieces that I just hit with the gray compound. I took them to the sink, used the Dawn and the warm water, and then I wiped them with a paper towel and realized a lot of the stuff was still on there and coming off as I wiped it with a paper towel. So that's what ended up happening with this white buff, is I wasn't getting them clean enough in the wash. So pay attention to that. Admittedly, it is rewarding learning how to do this. There's plenty of mistakes that I might make here and there, and you know, starting out with the first couple of pieces, I could have just filmed me doing the last couple of pieces after I had this figured out and was good at it, you know, make myself look like a badass mofo. But that's not really the point of our show. The point of our show is to demonstrate that just about anybody, if you're even a little mechanically inclined, you can do this. Just do the right homework, figure out what the directions are, and you can do this too. I'm in the middle of doing the off-camera, all these other pieces off-camera, and after getting the initial scuzz off this one piece that goes to the windscreen, I see a significant scratch here. That's not going to come off with just, you know, gray compound. I'm going to have to sand that. Looking at it closely on the back, there's actually a divot there. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but about a centimeter from my finger, there's a divot. Typically what I want to do is use a punch with a flat head, but those are in my other garage, so I've got to make do with what I've got here. I have a large Phillips head screwdriver, and you know, the very tip of it is flat. Okay, well, I've got the 320 sandpaper here, and with the 320 sandpaper I'll pull out this scratch, and it should help make it look pretty good. Now, as I sand this, it turns the finish to a dull look. Don't be concerned about that. Once you get back on your buff with the different compounds, it's going to shine back up. From here I go back to the gray compound, and then the brown, which is Tripoli, and then I'll hit it with, you know, at the very end, the chrome compound, the white. This trim piece is different. This one's made out of aluminum. This needs polishing too. So let's take a look at that. This might be a little more difficult. So just one word, when you're buffing and you get a little buildup on your piece of metal, this stuff comes right off with a towel. Yeah, this stuff will come right off with a towel. So, you know, ultimately I am going to wash this with soap and water And that helps get this stuff off too. But while you're buffing, don't be afraid if some of this stuff is staying behind. It stays behind because it melts on. You have to generate enough heat to get it off. Or you just get a little towel and wipe it off afterwards. It's no big deal. So yeah, originally I was concerned about this smiley that was going to be the hardest piece to do. Surprise, it was the easiest piece. I was concerned because it's aluminum and it's very thin. Look how thin it is, and it's got an odd shape. And so with its odd shape, you know, I was concerned that something would get away from me and it would bend, you know, maybe vibrating on the buffing wheel or something. And it turned out to be a simple thing to do. One word of caution, this edge here is just like a blade. This edge here, rounded, no problem. So now I'm going to wash it, get the last of the residue off, and we'll get a final picture here in just a minute. Here are the final pieces coming off the buffing wheel. They came out really nice. Oxidation gone. And again, this is aluminum, so it does have a little different luster than the rest of the metal on the car, and the rest of the Brightwork is stainless steel, or in the case of the bumper, it's chrome. They are beautiful, ready to go on the car.